So, good evening, everyone, and good morning, Jeremy, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Steve Schneider, I'm the head of the Department of Computer Science. It's my privilege today to introduce Jeremy Burton. Before we get started, a poll has just been posted for you. This will help us understand our audience today, so please take a moment to complete it. And there will be other polls through the webinar, so please engage with them as well as they come up through the session. Additionally, can you please use the Q&A box that's available to post your questions in, and maybe alongside your question also mention your name and course, or if you've graduated. So feel free to put your questions in as you think of them throughout the session. So I'll introduce Jeremy. So from Surrey to Silicon Valley, Jeremy has paved an impressive career in computer software, working with key industry figures such as Dell and Benioff, to currently being the CEO of Observe. Jeremy, your successes to date are apparent, but our audience today may not be aware of your roots. You grew up in Middlesbrough, an avid football fan, which translated into you being part of Surrey's football team a while ago. You started to pave your career journey back in 1986 when you joined the University of Surrey, studying a BEng in Information Systems Engineering, where I understand you described Surrey as a breath of fresh air. Being an avid gamer and a keen programmer at college, your interest in software was clear from a young age. Today, we want to dig a bit deeper into your amazing resume and the challenges you've overcome and your industry experience. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights about your journey and the advice you can give. So without further delay, I'll hand over to Roman Bauer, the Computer Science Director of Employability, who will lead from here. Over to Roman.
Many thanks, Steve, for the introduction, and welcome, Jeremy, and thanks everyone for filling out the polls. There will be several polls during the course of this session today, and so I will also incorporate this in some of the questions. And so yeah, I would like to start with questions addressed to Jeremy. There will be afterwards also time for you to ask questions in an open Q&A session. Feel free to already now type in those questions, and I will afterwards select some of those to be asked. But first, we will have some interview questions, predefined interview questions already. Good. So, Jeremy, you evidently have a very successful career, and it would be great maybe if you could briefly summarize your career and maybe just highlight one of the challenges that you have faced during your career that you had to overcome in order to get to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, it's all down to Surrey University. I think that was the line everybody told me to say. No, it's been an amazing journey, and the thing about tech, I mean, I always felt it was as much of a hobby as a job. You know, people now are asking me, "Oh, what are you going to do when you retire?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know how to do anything else. I'm not even sure I ever want to." But look, I like many in the tech industry, I started off as a programmer over at ICL in Bracknell, which is, you know, not that far from Guildford, and that was, looking back, although at the time I wasn't the world's greatest programmer, truth be told, but I realized that I could do things that other programmers couldn't do. Like, I was pretty good at explaining the technology. I was not actually that great at implementing, but I realized pretty early on that I could sell my ideas to people. I could explain the technology, and I could sell my ideas. And so my career ultimately went from programming into what's called pre-sales support, which when I moved to Oracle, I would actually help salespeople explain the Oracle technology to customers. And I loved that, because you talk to a different customer every day. And what I was good at talking to people about tech and convincing them that this tech was better than that tech. And because I'd been a programmer, I wasn't really intimidated by the technology. And so whatever they could throw at me, I felt like I could understand. So yeah, that sort of shift from being a programmer and thinking, okay, I'm a tech person. I used to write games when I was a kid, to realizing like, hey, maybe I'm not the world's greatest programmer. And if I'm being compared against this group of guys that are way smarter and just better than me, then that, like, I don't want to do that. I want to focus on the thing that I'm really good at, and then have other people be measured against, you know, me on things that are my strengths. So yeah, when I moved to the US, I wasn't so much in a pre-sales role. I was working in product management for a guy called Benioff, who's gone on to do really bigger and better things. I think when I worked for Mark, I mean, just to give you perspective, he was 32 years old, and one of the youngest vice presidents at Oracle, and I was like 27. So I literally was not long out of college, 26. I take that back. But yeah, product management was not that different to pre-sales. It was dealing with the technology. It was selling people on your ideas. It was closer to the development team. But I sort of followed then more that career path. I went into marketing. Marketing's not that different to product management, which is not that different to pre-sales. Maybe this will give people some level of comfort. I knew nothing about marketing when I went into marketing. And my first marketing job was a VP of marketing. And because in tech, particularly in B2B tech, like an understanding of the product and how to talk about the product and what the value of the product is really way more important than knowing about marketing, because you can learn that and you can hire people that know that. But really understanding like what's the differentiation of this product and why, that's one of the critical skills. Well, you know, if you've got a background as a programmer, getting to the bottom of why a product is built a certain way or why it's different is actually not just fairly straightforward. It's super interesting. So yeah, I sort of have bounced in and out of marketing jobs. I've been, you know, in a marketing team, and then I've done like general management type roles, you know. So when I left Oracle and went to Veritas, I ultimately ended up managing one of their big businesses. And that kind of that job is very different. You know, you're not just marketing or engineering. You've got a lot of different functions underneath you. And I'd say the hardest lesson to learn, particularly when you've been a good individual contributor, you know, is how do you become not a great person to work with, but a great person to work for? And I think it's really hard to make that leap from sort of good individual contributor to good manager. And your temptation as a good individual contributor is to do it all yourself. You tend to hire people that are not that strong because you think, well, look, if they don't do it, I can join, I can fill in the gaps. I can dive in, get my hands dirty. I can pull this through. And you end up getting burned out. And so I got pretty cooked by not hiring good enough people and not realizing that you've got to hire great people, and then you've got to give them enough room and enough freedom to get the job done. You've got to be prepared to let them fail in cases, which is really, really hard to do if you're a sort of part control freak, part perfectionist, I want it done my way kind of person, which I was. So yeah, that was probably the hardest thing to overcome in my entire career. Like how do you'll hear it say, oh, how do you scale an organization? How do you personally scale? Well, it's about hiring great people and then not dabbling in what they're doing, empowering them, giving them enough room to do their thing, and maybe, you know, at times sort of coaching and picking up pieces when the train goes off the track, which it will from time to time if you let them go, then making sure that they know that's not like a fatal mistake and what they should have done. And, you know, that's a really hard transition, I would tell you. But yeah, and then ultimately, look, after running a few doing a couple of general management roles, I was CEO of a company about 10 years ago called Surrey Software. That was actually right through the last big recession. That was not fun, but I learned a ton. And then, yeah, today, running Observe, very different kind of company. We're a VC-backed startup, whereas the last company that I ran was a private equity-backed, really a turnaround company that had done well for a while and sort of, then not done well, and then the private equity guys tend to buy those companies out, get someone in to try and turn them around, which was pretty hard through a recession, which is why it was a rich but fairly grim experience. I learned a lot, but I wouldn't want to do it again. Observe is much different, right? We've got venture capitalists. We started from scratch. It's not exactly 5 guys in a garage, but when I joined, there was 9 engineers. We'd not written a line of code on the product, and so I've seen this from like ground zero. So that's maybe a long-winded summary.
That's great. Many thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, that's very informative. Something that you also implicitly mentioned is that, of course, times are changing, and along those lines also the challenges will change. And so I'm wondering about your opinion about currently, what do you think are the biggest challenges for students who maybe just graduated? There are actually quite a lot of students here in the audience who just graduated. What do you think is necessary, or what challenges are necessary to overcome in order to also have a successful career, do you think? No.
Yeah, there's a lot in that. I mean, look, I think the economy right now and the environment is, a lot worse than it was this time last year, right? So the tech industry, which is what I know best, this happens every 7 or 8 years. I look back over the last, 25 years, and I've been in the US at least, and the tech industry, we sort of create a new big thing. It gets overhyped, it gets overfunded, and then we realize that actually it's not as great as we thought it was, and we've created too many companies, and not all those companies are great, and so then some of those companies go under, and some of those companies, lay off. And everyone then predicts the end of tech. And then, you know what, that never happens. Or to date, it's not happened. And then the next thing takes off. And I think what you've got going on right now is you've got a lot of overfunding in the last couple of years. So a lot of bad companies got funded, and a lot of good companies overspent. And so you're seeing a little bit of a pullback. I would not look at, for example, the crypto sector, right? It's decimated, probably like the .com sector was decimated in 2001. I wouldn't use that as an axis of reasoning. In my opinion, that was just kind of a dumb industry, and based on artificial scarcity. And you had a lot of people investing in crypto that had no clue as to what they were getting themselves into, right? And so I don't expect the crypto industry to have a big comeback, but I wouldn't equate that with the general pullback in other tech companies. I'll give you an example. AWS, Amazon in the 2001 recession, right? Its stock dropped 75%. I looked this up actually. Since that recession, Amazon stock is up 19,405%. Okay, so but take a blue chip stock like Microsoft. Microsoft was down 56% in the 2001 recession. Since then, Microsoft stock is up 1,210%. Right, so these returns are staggering. So I'm obviously huge believer in tech. There's a little pullback going on right now, but tech will be back. I think every company is becoming a tech company. Doesn't matter what you do, really, you've got to have some tech at the core. So people who are coming out of college that are tech savvy, I think there are, they're going to be spoiled for choice in terms of roles. I'm very bullish on the world of data. I mean, Observe, as the name maybe suggests, we do data analytics. And I fall into the camp of people who believe like everything is a matter of data. Like you can find out the answer to any question or any problem if you've got enough data. the data volumes are growing 40% on average in every company every year. So people who can make sense of that data, derive insights from that data, I think are going to do very, very well. I also think the consumer tech world is huge. I mean, my son, who's at college right now, he's into gaming and 3D modeling. You know, it's the kind of industry where maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you would have said, oh, son, don't get into that. Don't play around in gaming's huge, and it's going to be more huge. And you look at virtual reality and you know, in the consumer tech world, and then you look at augmented reality in the business world. I think both those technologies, you can't imagine how big they're going to be. I'm not sure I buy into the metaverse and me living my life there, but you know, the discrete technology of virtual reality and augmented reality, I'm big in. So tech will dust itself down and keep on going. I don't see the comeback of maybe the crypto industry, for example, that's been decimated, but I see many other parts of tech that are going to do very well. And as I said, like data and understanding data is really replaced, you know. We had probably computer science for many years, and maybe data science and understanding data is probably going to be at the center of a lot of it, certainly in the B2B world.
Right. Yes, that makes perfectly sense. And so you have highlighted some aspects of this industry that you think will grow in the future, and some, like the crypto industry, that you think will maybe not so grow. And I also see in the poll, it was highlighted that many of the audience, they are wondering which skills to enhance and how to progress in their career, and that of course is a related question. So for example, regarding skills, do you think, for example, AI, I guess that's also related to data analysis, right? Do you think AI will gain a lot of traction?
Yeah, I think, you know, data is the broad term, right? There's a lot you can do with data. I think the world of AI ML is going to have a profound effect, not just on the economy, but on people's lives. You know, and I think it's going to get humans out of doing a lot of the sort of very mundane tasks. And then, you know, the worry, the naysayers of tech are always like, oh, but then everybody's going to get laid off and we're going to be, you know, it's going to make poverty worse. That has never proven to be true. You know, you know, since we invented the, you know, industrial JCB digger, that did not, you know, signify an end to life for laborers, right? We always find other things to do or better ways to spend our time. So I think it's going to have a really profound effect. By the way, I think robotics, along those similar lines, some of the work that's going on in robotics right now is mind-blowing. Again, it's a way to get sort of routine, mundane jobs done by things that never get tired and don't make mistakes. Generally, humans get tired, humans make mistakes, humans don't produce consistent outcomes. All of that stuff, I think, should be done really by tech. So yeah, I think AI, ML, robotics for sure. I would also say, like there's like a softer skills side of things as well. You know, technical skills, absolutely. You want to get into a certain industry. I would also say in tech, I mean, I made the comment a second ago that every company is becoming a tech company. It was always that, like, if you're in the arts, you didn't have a role in tech. That's not true anymore, right? If you look, I mean, I mentioned 3D modeling a second ago. I mean, my daughter's studying graphic design. She's done 2 internships at tech companies, and she's an animator, right? And turns out that nerds who do B2B tech are not good at telling stories and explaining what their products do. So she can create metaphors for what their product does and turn it into something that can convey to a newcomer what they do in a very simple form in terms of an animation. So storytelling, I would never have thought that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but the first sort of experience that a lot of people have of new tech, it's online. And so how do you explain that tech? How do you make it appealing? How do you make it compelling? So I see now a lot more arts type people getting into tech roles. And then the softer skills, and I think these are timeless, being able to communicate and communicate well and sell your ideas. Just because you're an engineer doesn't mean to say that you're not selling. I'm telling you, like the founders of the company that I'm at right now, they're selling their ideas every day, because right now the company, when it started, there was 5 guys in engineering, now there's 66. And you've got to get people on board with the way you'd like to do things. You've got to inspire them. And so the sort of communication skills, and I sort of loosely call it selling skills. But if you're a good communicator and you can get people excited about your ideas, you're going to do well. And that sort of infectious enthusiasm, or that passion for what you're into, if you can get that across to other folks in your group or your team, you become very, very valuable to that team. So don't ignore the softer skills, I guess, is maybe the punchline there.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, it's also reassuring to know that grant writing skills, where you also have to sell, of course, an idea, is also relevant in the tech industry. Good. So slightly different topic. So you have worked in the UK and in the US, and being an expat myself, I know that this is, of course, a big change to one's life. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on your decision to move to the US, to Silicon Valley, and what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, it was very random in that I was at Oracle, and I came out to the US for a week to learn about a new product that this guy Mark Benioff was building, and I was sort of working with the dev team, and they had a new product launch coming up, and they said, well, why don't I knew how to use the product, maybe even better than the engineering team. They were building the product, but I was using the product to build applications. And they're like, hey, why don't you help out with the launch demo? We've got it coming up in a few weeks. And so I started helping out, and then I ended up being the main guy building it. And then they were like, well, you can't go back. You've got to just stay for another week. Sort of just stay for another week. Anyway, 6 weeks later, I mean, you can imagine, I mean, I'd recently just got married. I was like, honey, I'll be back next Sunday. Anyway, 6 weeks later, Mark flew my wife out from Windsor, where we lived, because we did this launch at Moscone Center in San Francisco, up where Steve Jobs used to do a lot of the Apple launches. It was actually at Yerba Buena Gardens, right next door to Moscone Center. And we did this launch event, and which was pretty wild. And then Mark said, hey, you should move out and come work for me. And so I went back and said, hey, what do you asked my wife, hey, what do you think about moving out? And we were like, well, if we don't do it now, maybe we never will. And the only comment Ruth made was like, but we haven't even paid off our sofa. So anyway, we didn't really think a lot about it. We were like, hey, we'll go for a couple of years and see what it's like. And then, that was in 1995, so we clearly stayed more than a couple of years. But the thing is, like, if you're in tech, this is the sort of epicenter of the industry. And I know there's, you've now got good startup communities in Austin, Texas, in New York, in London, and many other places. But for me, I don't know, Silicon Valley can only be in California, because there's a lot of sort of transient or immigrants like myself who sort of thrive off the sort of can-do attitude in the area. And you've got a lot of folks here who've made money, who are now investing in companies and individuals that have great ideas, and they're risk takers. And so that perpetuates itself. And, that sort of risk-taking culture, I love that. No one asked really, well, I'm not sure you can do that. What school did you go to? there's very much a can-do attitude. No, people don't see obstacles. They see ways to get things done. And then there's investors that'll give you money to hire smart people and get those things done. So for me, the sort of positivity of the environment and the like can-do attitude, and yeah, the weather, you get 300 days sunshine every year, that helps, you know. But yeah, it's really the attitude of the area, and it's been created over like 30 or 40 years. And as I said, it perpetuates because you've got people who've been successful now investing in others who they think can be successful.
Okay, great. And then some students are interested in potentially going also to the US. Do you have any tips for such students and any US market pointers?
Yeah, it's a great question. The US, well, the US is a big place. The West Coast, right? I let's be clear, like that. I spent quite a bit of time in Boston over the years. Boston is more like England than it is like San Francisco, and the West Coast in particular. People tend to not spend a whole lot of time planning. Or I know certainly when I went to college, albeit many, many years ago, there was a lot of thought had to go into requirements and design and, you know, a lot of things emanating out of the UK and Europe were very like process oriented. I think all of that goes out the window. I mean, at Oracle, there was no documentation for the database, their core product, none. And in fact, funny story, because they couldn't get PCs in the door quick enough for developers, they started renting they started renting PCs from various different companies. And the guys who did the Windows part of Oracle, they were developing on rental computers, and anyway, the lease was up on the computers, and they returned them to the rental place with all of the source code for the database. And if you go back 20 odd years, you'll realize, oh, there was never a release of Oracle 7.3 on Windows, and the reason is they lost the source code. It went back on, and so you think, how could that happen, right? There's a multi-billion-dollar company who lost an entire branch of their source code because it went back to a rental place. But that's the environment that you're walking into. It sort of tolerates the go-getters more than the naysayers. That's why, by the way, things like .com and crypto and all these disastrous market segments also happen. But there's, people want to be inspired here, and people want ideas, and they want people who are going to go work hard to make those unrealistic ideas happen. And for me, that was the cultural shift from the UK in particular. Like my dad would always tell me the 5 reasons why something wouldn't work, right? And I always felt like it might have changed. I've been out of the UK for a while, but the British in general, this is what gives the British a great sense of humor, right? The sort of sarcasm, but it's always glass half empty. They'll always tell you the reason why something won't work. Oh, I don't like the look of that. It's the exact opposite. Certainly on the West Coast, which I loved, by the way. And folks like Richard Branson, for example, in the UK, I can totally see why he was successful, because he's got a very sort of US attitude to service. He's can-do, and he's positive, and he wants customer service to be great and people to feel awesome about themselves when they go into his airline or his store. And he differentiated that entire business on customer service. I mean, he didn't invent anything. He had a phone, a plane, and records. They weren't new things, but he brought, I think, a sort of US-based service mindset to those industries. But yeah, that's the main difference, I would say. Just culturally, there's a lot more risk-taking here.
Okay, great, very interesting. Yeah, so a very pragmatic also approach, right? It's like when the pessimist and optimist discuss whether the glass is full or half full or half empty, the pragmatist just takes it and drinks it, right?
Right. Right. No, our engineers are very much like, we can debate forever the technical answer to a problem. Their attitude is, well, go write the code. He who writes the code wins. So meaning go implement it and show me. Don't like, and you know what, if that's wrong, we'll redo it and we'll do it again. But and that mindset to me is what let's not spend weeks deciding this. Go write the code, you know?
But regardless of the location, what do you personally look for when you hire someone? You mentioned before that this can be, of course, very challenging to find good people and then to be able also to lead them. But when you identify someone, what are the features that you're looking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, you know, we sort of screen folks to be smart. We assume everyone that certainly on the engineering side has got some level of aptitude. But I would tell you, the folks who have a great attitude, like we interviewed a lady from Stanford, didn't do great on the programming skills, right? And she was coming in to be a front end programmer, but she had this great attitude and enthusiasm and desire to learn. And she knew she didn't do well in the coding test, but she went home and did it again and sent through like, hey, I know I didn't do great here, but check out, this is the way I should have done it, sort of thing. And that she got the job, right? Even though she didn't do great, we did interview smarter folks, but her attitude and everyone who engaged with her loved talking with her. And so to me, the attitude and enthusiasm for the role, that it's sort of an old school thing, but it matters, right? People who are curious, people who are determined. I always love hearing people's background and the story of their life. Because you see traits often in people's background in their life as to what kind of person they are and what they could become. So I tend to, you know, folks who will go the extra mile, folks who are determined, folks who are curious, folks who have a great attitude, you know, yeah, because a lot of it, we have for grads in particular, we don't expect grads to come in here and change the game on the product. I mean, this might let some air out of the balloon, but we have low expectations for grads, right? But what we want is people who can be coached and learn quickly and become great. We have a guy here, Cole, he's 2 years out of college. I think this guy's doing more than folks we've got here that have got 15 years experience. You know, and he came in, he's a sponge, he just soaks up everything. And, you know, sometimes I think some companies be careful because if they've got a remote work policy, that sounds good. I would tell you that's not good if you're a grad. Like, it's not good. You need to be coached. You need help. When you come out of college, you don't know anything really. And so if you've got a good mentor at work, a good coach, those first 2 or 3 years of your career are super important. Be in the office every day, find a coach, find a mentor. The trajectory of your career you'll be blown away. And I've seen folks here also who we hired who chose to be remote, didn't get the right coach, and they've struggled, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, the sort of basic things I look for, but then, you know, I think there's things that grads need. I needed coaching coming out of college. I didn't have the discipline, right? But get a good coach. And sometimes the bigger companies are better at that. You know, don't shy away from the bigger companies. They can be a good starting point. They'll train, they'll coach, they'll mentor, they'll help you figure out really what you want to do. And you may well be able to move around within that company, you know.
Yes, so essentially, maybe specific IT skills are maybe less important than the mindset and the attitude and your kind of overall motivation and enthusiasm as a person. No?
Yeah, and I mean, look, I spent most of my career, probably the last 20 years, maybe in marketing. I mean, I graduated really as a C programmer. So I'd say don't. Like, you may end up doing something that is nothing to do with what you're currently doing right now. But if I look at the traits that I have in my current job versus as a programmer, a lot of them are the same, right? I think I had a great attitude. I think I was curious. I just wasn't the best programmer. but I was in a bigger company, but I realized pretty quick I was better than those programmers at other things. And so then it was like, what can I do that like I'm going to be top of the class on? You know, and you start talking to people in the company. Hey, what do you do? Oh, you spend time with customers? Yeah, that sounds good. I think I could do that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
That makes perfectly sense. Yeah, I also often encounter students who are looking for placements, and they feel very insecure because they might not have a certain specific skill. But my advice is usually still apply, because there might also be some training programs that help you get this specific skill if it's so important, right? Afterwards. And related to that, so you mentioned, of course, mentoring is very important, to have someone who is who has more expertise and experience than you, especially at the beginning. This also has implications, I suppose, with regards to the type of company that you apply for at the beginning of your career. Like, what kind of advice do you give students who are just out there now looking for jobs? Would you suggest to take any job that is somehow interesting, or do you think they should look for very specific characteristics?
I would have an open mind about it. I think you know, your getting your first job is probably the most important, because then you've got experience. You can show in that job that you know, you can achieve, and you can really then use that first job to find out if this is actually what you want to do. I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, your dream job comes in. You walk into it. I mean, you know, Cole, the grad that we hired, he wanted to go to a small company. He wanted to be a programmer. He wanted to do front end, and I guess this was his dream job. And maybe that explains why he's doing fantastically well. But we've had others come in here that you know, they got into the wrong part of the company, and then they realized, like, hey, maybe I don't want to be on this side. Maybe I want to be over here. But if they're, again, if they've got the aptitude, if they've got the right attitude, if they've got it's easy to move someone with the right sort of core attributes from here to here. You know, hey, go work with customers. So I'd say the danger if you go searching for your dream job is it might not, the timing might not be right. Meaning your dream job might not be available right now. And what's better than, or what's kind of second best is a job. Certainly a job in an industry that you think you're going to enjoy. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm tech. I always felt was my hobby, so I was always going to work in tech. So you know, hey, go get a job at a tech company, sure, but I mean, if it's healthcare tech or fintech or biotech, or maybe that doesn't matter so much, you know. Because your first job really is about, you know, proving that you can hold down a job, proving that, you know, you can achieve. And then look, if that job or that company or that industry isn't for you, it's easier to find work while you're in work.
Yes, that makes absolutely sense. And it's actually related to another question that came up recently with regards to keeping abreast of developments in the field, because of course IT and tech is a very fast-paced field. There are new technologies emerging all the time, and so the question is, how do you ensure that you're up to date on this tech? And if I understand you correctly, maybe that's something that is also a skill in itself, right? To kind of interact with people, network, and learn about these things.
Yeah, that's actually an awesome question, because I over my career have worked with so many people that got very specialized, and they're sort of the greatest person in this one area, but then the world moved on, and then you're sort of in a dead end at that point. And you know, I always felt like, okay, I mean, I saw that many times over, and so I feel like one of the arts of being in the tech industry is you've got to be adaptable. Again, it's another sort of soft characteristic, but to me, this is what comes of having like a very open mind to new tech. Just because it's new doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't check out what it is, or how it works, or how it's relevant. And to me, that's an attitude and a state of mind. Always be open to the new thing. don't always believe that your current thing is better than the new thing because you know the current thing. Because if the new thing proves to be better, you get left behind. And I think I've always tried to jump on the new thing when it comes along, and at least have an open mind to it. Because that adaptability, again, is a core skill of an employee. I mean, I came in as a programmer. I went into pre-sales. I went into post-sales. I went into pre-sales. I went into product management. I went into marketing. That they're not discrete technologies, but at the same time, I've worked on databases. I've worked on applications. I've worked on storage. I've worked on compute. I'm now working on data again. Like everything sort of works the same-ish, because you end up with a general understanding of how things are built, right? I've always really worked at product companies, whether they're building a hardware product or a software product, or right now software as a service. The way you build a product has changed over the years. Today we do continuous delivery, right? We used to do, I mean, waterfall delivery of products. That's a change. But when the agile movement got going in, sort of like 2005, like I was all over it. I didn't know it, but that's why I was all over it. And so I think you've got to keep that open mind and that curiosity to the new thing. So, you sort of don't get locked into one area, and therefore, hey, this company, which is the specialist in this area, when everything starts going south, your skills don't, and your value doesn't go south with it,
Yes, so that's great. There's another question from a person who identifies as Blue Tea. I'm not sure what the full name is, but so the question is, what's something important to your daily routine you wish you started sooner?
I'd say exercise. I very much, because tech is my hobby, I tend to do it a lot. And I'll end up working a lot. And you can get fried very easily. I mean, I think this is one of the things you don't fully realize when you leave college or just after, or probably for maybe 10 years after, is like your career is a marathon. And you want to have a long and fulfilling career. I never looked at my career or my job as just a job, a job. I looked at it, I mean, it's sort of what I do, right? It's part of my life. And I love working with people who build products, but if you do too much of that and you don't give your mind a break, how do you switch off, right? That's the question. And for me, I mean, obviously at college, I was big into sports at college, but you get out the habit. And now I'm sort of very maniacal about cycling and biking, and getting out and actually I go climb hills, and I climb hills because you can't think about anything else other than that hill that you're climbing. It completely clears your mind and frees your mind of all the problems that you were thinking about are gone. And so one thing I learned probably 15 years ago, unless you plan that exercise, it doesn't happen. And so, but if you plan it, you can then organize your daily routine and your life around it. And certainly pre-COVID, I would do about 200,000 miles a year. That travel takes a lot out of you, but it's the fitness and the exercise that helped me get through it. So yeah, I wish I'd done that for the first 15 years of my career, and not just sort of the last 15 years here. Yeah, that's probably the one thing.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, so essentially, it's important also to maintain a work-life balance, which also has been raised in the questions, and you maintain this by really planning specifically. You will do this that weekend. You will do this mountain or something.
Yeah, I would say for 15 years, I probably didn't have much work-life balance. Actually, kids change perspective dramatically, and fortunately, at the time we started having kids, I was senior enough that every now and then I could take my wife in fact, my eldest child now, Edward, he almost did 100,000 miles before he was 1. So I made the decision to like take him along. And when you hear that screaming baby on the plane, that was that was probably one of my kids at one point. But now I feel like I sort of tried to integrate my family into my work travel. That's how I managed to get some balance. But I would say, prior to having kids, I was probably on the wrong side of that work-life balance. I was probably too much work and not enough life. But early in your career, I feel like I benefit now from the work that I made a lot of progress in my career very early. I mean, I was one of the youngest VPs and senior VPs at Oracle back in the 90s. I got a lot of great experience early on. And what do I credit that to? Hard work at one level. But then I realized that, okay, something has to change when I have kids. Okay, I can't be away as much. I've got to bring the kids along. And then once we'd had 3 kids, I realized like, I gotta take care of myself. And so that was like, okay, I got to bake an exercise routine and draw some boundaries. Like, I'm not going to, like on a Saturday, I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm not going to do email. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make everyone's life miserable in my group by sending 1,000 emails on a Sunday night, or over the weekend. And that's hard to do when you're used to going flat out and working all those hours. But if you draw those boundaries, you benefit. And actually, I think your team benefits. And I feel like I do better quality work now, even though I work less. I'm smarter about what I spend my time on. And that's actually back to what I said earlier about what's the hardest thing in my career, going from a great individual contributor, control freak, to a good person to work for. Some of that is not making your team's life hell. So you've got to draw boundaries. And yeah, I think for maybe the last 15 years, I have had much better work-life balance than for maybe the first 10.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. So, but I guess you're also saying that maybe the work-life balance that you should aim for maybe changes with age, I guess, right? At the beginning, it's maybe less important, but it's important to do a lot of work that will afterwards benefit you a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the grads that we have in here, look, they live in San Francisco. They get in mid-morning, like 10 or 10. Yeah, they're probably none of them are in right now, but they'll still be here at 8 o'clock, and then they'll go have dinner locally and whatever, head back to the city on the Caltrain. So they work a lot, right? They'll work 10, 11 hours a day. And the ones that I mean, they're making a difference for the company. But yeah, if you've got like a wife and kids, you can't, the guys that are a little bit older, they, they get in probably 7:38 and they're out of here by 5. That's fine, So your schedule and changes, but I think the most important thing is you've got to sort of consciously think, like, have a plan. What am I going to do? What is going to be my style of work? How am I going to avoid getting burned out? But at the same time, how am I going to advance my career? I still believe there's sort of no substitute for hard work at certain points, right? At the same time, you can't work flat out all the time. You will get fried, you will burn out, you won't have the passion and enthusiasm, you'll do poorer work.
Yeah. Yes. So that brings me actually to a question that was asked by Rufus Redwood Rowe, or at least a relevant question. He asks, did you know that when you left university, you wanted to lead or one day become a CEO in tech?
When I left college, all I knew that I wanted a Porsche. I wanted a 911, which sounds like very materialistic, but I did. I mean, I've always been into cars and Formula One and things like that, and I don't know what I was like, yeah, I want to work hard and earn some money and get that nice car. And it turns out if you end up being good at your job and you achieve, and this is again the other thing I loved about the US culture, or tech culture in particular, was you're going to get asked to lead a team, right? That's just the way it is. Now, some people who have been great individual contributors don't make great managers. And I would tell you, when I first became a manager, I was not a good manager. But I did get a buzz out of it. I kind of liked, I did like running the team and having a team and team spirit. And I think maybe I got a lot of this from sports. I loved the soccer team. I was the captain of the soccer team when I was there. But I never set out to be a leader or a CEO. I set out, I knew I wanted to work in tech, and I knew I wanted to earn good money, and I knew I didn't want to live in the northeast of England. They were maybe my three things. And actually, I lived Guildford in the area around there, which is what I set out to do. But yeah, at a point though, at a point, I think when my team got to sort of thing, like more than a handful of people, I was like, all right, now I want that guy's job. And so, yeah, I'd say from probably my late 20s, I did want to run a company. It's like, ultimately, yeah, I want to run the whole thing. And then the question is a company like Oracle or EMC, where I've been at. And I did get asked by the prior CEO of EMC if I'd interest in running the company. And actually, funnily enough, I didn't, because I looked at what he did and his job, and this big sprawling company of, at the time, 40,000 people. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But I do want to run a company. And so the startup for me just seemed, I want to build a company and instill in it the things that I think are important and build it the way I want to build it. I don't want to go into a company and fix other people's problems, which is, that's the downside of going into, one of those big established companies. There's a couple of jobs I probably should have taken in my career that weren't a company that observed size, but weren't EMC size. I got asked if I wanted to run Snowflake back in 2013. I probably should have done that one. But, hey, there's always going to be things like that, like woulda, coulda, shoulda. I tend not to look back too much at things I should have done but didn't, and more try and look forward at, like, hey, what do I want to do in future? So I'm very happy doing what I'm doing right now. I knew from probably my late 20s that I really wanted to run a company. And then the question is what's the path, and can I become rounded enough to do a good job, right?
Right. That's great. So, but if you had to kind of capture what essentially motivates you to do what you do, what is important to you?
I've always been a product person, right? The reason why I sort of look down my nose at things like crypto and the financial bubbles is the financial services industry. They don't have products. There is nothing, right? It's a services business, but tech generally, I like product companies building things, and there's something still to this day very magical about having a team of engineers work on something. Every Friday here we do a demo hour, and we show the engineering team shows things that they've built or made work in the product during the week. That's awesome. I love, we worked for a week, we didn't have this feature, and now we've got it, and look, this is the difference it makes the product. And now I get to see how that impacts a business, people we sell to. And again, that's sort of what I get the sort of buzz out of. And then the second thing is I've got some well-held beliefs of things that have been right and wrong in companies I've worked at. And what's the right way to run a company, and what should the right values be, and how should we treat people. And I think the ultimate fulfillment in your career is I get a chance to instill those values and beliefs into a clean slate company. It's a green field. You can do whatever you want. And so I guess ultimately it's like, well, am I really as good as I think I am? Can I build a company with what I believe are those core values, and can it be a good company? Can it be a great company? And one of the reasons why I wanted to do the startup was exactly that. I've learned a lot. I've worked for some amazing people, but I've never built, I didn't build Oracle. I didn't build EMC. All these companies I've been at, I didn't build them. I was just sort of on the train as it was going down the tracks. And yeah, maybe I helped it get to the destination a bit faster, but I didn't create the train. So you ultimately get to that point where you're like, I want to create the train. I don't want someone else's train, right? Because it may be going in a direction that I don't want to go. But I want to create my own and build my team and have the values and create a product that can change a set of companies, make a difference for them as well. So that's sort of at the core, the motivation. It's sort of part of it is on me. Like, am I as good as I think I am? And can I create a company that is much more awesome than the other companies that I've been at? Yeah.
So you need also a bit competitiveness. I think that's
yeah,
important.
Yeah. That is ultimately it. I am very competitive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, very good. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take more questions because we are pretty much at the end of this session. I want to thank you very, very much, Jeremy, for all this advice and those insights. And your honesty, of course. This is really, really, I think, very, very helpful for many of us. And also, I would like to mention that there is actually a poll also for the audience just now, so you can also there give some feedback. And so thanks very much. I very much enjoyed meeting you, discussing with you, and I hope also everyone else did so.
Yeah. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.